This video is sponsored by Describe. This is the next installment in a series of videos about the many ways you can build your RPG characters. With each installment, we start with one aspect of a character and figure out what it might look like if that was the first thing we knew about a character and how it might guide the rest of our choices. Today's starting point is... alignment? Well, okay, we have a lot to talk about. First of all, does anybody start with alignment? Well, sometimes, maybe. But really, the most common version of starting with your alignment is when your group decides to run an evil campaign. Now, if y'all are interested in seeing what that process looks like, how you can create a character who is evil but also plays well enough with others so that your fellow players don't want to kill you, let me know in the comments below and we will make that character. But to be completely honest, making an evil character, or even just making a character for an evil campaign, is a very different discipline. It's very specific. Today we're just looking at how any alignment could potentially act as the jumping off point for a character. I recorded the character creation section of this video on Twitch. Make sure to follow me on Twitch to catch these live streams when I do them. But before we created the character, we had a whole conversation to set expectations and define our terms, which means we basically had to figure out how alignment even works and come to a consensus about how we were going to think about it before we even started making the character. And I'll point you towards the first video I made about alignment, but I'll also summarize some of what we talked about in the Twitch chat. First, is alignment even useful for role-playing? It's a relevant question. Alignment is a very strange beast. It started as almost more of a faith or religion in the early games, and there was only one axis between law and chaos. Then a few years later, good and evil were added, and now we have the grid we know today. And on the one hand, good and evil are easier for us to get our heads around because the concepts of law and chaos are tricky to play in our games, or to even agree on for definitions. For example, does a lawful character follow the law? Do they just believe laws should exist and are necessary to keep the peace? Or do they just have a personal code that guides their actions? Meanwhile, chaos could mean a character is an anarchist and doesn't think governments are necessary for people to live happy lives. Or, as so many groups play it, chaotic characters could just be an excuse for players to be, oh my gosh, so random. So sure, good and evil are simpler concepts. But on the other hand, trying to define good and evil has vexed humanity for a few thousand years now, so coming up with one conclusive answer that every RPG group agrees on is a pretty tall order. That being said, I do like one definition I got in the comments from my previous alignment video, which suggested that good equals selfless and evil equals selfish. We could split hairs and debate that forever, but for the purposes of today's video, that's a good enough definition for us to work with. Likewise, the definitions of law and chaos we settled on focused on the debate of whether laws are good and necessary for a functioning society, or whether people should just abandon cities and live in harmony in nature. That's essentially the thrust of what we had to hash out before we could create the character. But wait! I haven't even answered the question. Is alignment useful? Well, my answer is a tentative yes, or rather, I think alignment can be useful, but it depends on how it's used. Should alignment be mandated by a GM? I used to say yes, of course, but honestly, if a player doesn't have a strong sense of how alignment works and doesn't know what to write down, then no, it's not really necessary. I just started running a new Curse of Strahd game this month, and during the Session 0, I told my players to only worry about writing down their alignment if doing so was going to be useful to them. If not, then they should instead focus on filling out their personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Sure, there are game mechanics in 5th edition that use alignment. There are monsters like the Rakshasa that take more damage based on certain alignments. There are magic items that react different ways to PCs with different alignments. It's definitely still a thing in 5th edition, and I'm sure that there are some of those monsters or items in Curse of Strahd. But to be completely honest, if any of those come up, I can work with the player in the moment to figure out the information I need to simulate having the answer about their alignment. I don't need to have those 2 words written on their sheet. I have other ways to still get to the soul of that character. And especially with a campaign like Curse of Strahd, at least the way I run it, the big question at the heart of the campaign has to do with moral decisions and testing the players. It's far more interesting to see what the characters will do and how far they're willing to go without running the risk of a player jumping in and saying, your character wouldn't do that because they're neutral good. Because honestly, that's what we're circling with this discussion. In my experience, there are basically 3 ways most groups tend to use alignment, if they use it at all. The first is that the players write it down on their sheet, but it doesn't really matter except for when those magic items or monsters crop up. And for any role-playing that comes up and any moral questions the party has to deal with, the players focus more on their personality traits and ideals and bonds and flaws and don't really factor in their alignment. The second approach is that alignment helps to inform a player's decisions, but when the character changes and evolves, they change their alignment accordingly. This is my preferred version, and it's the mindset we'll use today when creating this character. But the third version of using alignment is when a group uses it prescriptively instead of descriptively. In that scenario, your alignment really only seems to come up when the game master or the other players use it to police your behavior. And that sucks. So yeah, for that reason, I can absolutely see the argument that alignment isn't an especially useful metric for role-playing. And unless alignment is going to be the entire point of the campaign, like, for example, an evil campaign, then how much benefit is there for starting with your alignment when creating your character? Well, let's find out, because that's what I did, as just a thought experiment just to see what it would look like. And the character I created wound up being pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So to see this in action, let's jump over to the Twitch live stream and check out the character creation process. I'm going to roll a d10. We're just going to go in order. 1, 2, 3 are good. 4, 5, 6 are neutral. 7, 8, 9 are evil, in the lawful to neutral to chaotic in between. And for a 10, we'll reroll. 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be chaotic neutral. Okay. If we imagine a character is chaotic neutral, we can pretty well assume a couple things. One, that they are not terribly interested in good versus evil. The archetype for chaotic neutral is very often Han Solo. Clearly, he breaks the law all the time. He is a smuggler. He has no love for the Empire. He deals with smugglers here. He deals with criminals all the time. He is clearly not a lawful character. He doesn't seem to see any virtue in the existence of laws, because he doesn't particularly care who's winning the war, and doesn't seem to have any interest in that. And he also doesn't care about good or evil. I'm trying to think of this character as they're looking out at the rest of the alignment board, if that makes any sense, like from their perspective. If it doesn't have to be Han Solo, we're not going to make Han Solo, but I'm trying to look at a character who, if they look at law, and if they look at neutrality, they don't see a virtue. So, I'm just thinking of the Brennan Lee Mulligan quote.
Laws are threats made by the dominant socioeconomic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted, and police are basically an occupying army. You know what I mean?
I mean, that may be the mentality of this character to a certain degree, but towards the law. I think of someone who is more anarchic. Someone who isn't just not interested in whatever, but who is actually has a stronger belief. You do not need law. You don't need kings. People can govern themselves. And we should just leave each other alone. Don't bother anybody. So it's not a good and evil morality. It's a, people can do their own thing. Oh God, please don't make this a libertarian. Okay, yep, Unkillable Mr. Steak, you saved me from that mindset by pointing out Spider-Punk. Thank you. I think Spider-Punk is probably chaotic good, but it is a further trajectory to go down. If we're agreeing that like Spider-Punk is chaotic good, and V for Vendetta, which is not the character's name, but V from V for Vendetta is chaotic good, at least the film versions, those are characters who are fighting for change, right? I think that's what puts them into the category of good, which means I don't think that this character, I don't think chaotic good. I think the difference between chaotic good and chaotic neutral is wanting to see change versus just removing yourself from the situation whenever you can, or not wanting. It's almost like you're more like, I'm off the grid, but it's not just like true neutral. It's not worth my time. I'm not getting interested in any of it. It's that these are bad, laws and the existence of kings and societal structures is bad, but it is not worth my life to try to tear down that system. They believe that societal structures are wrong and there is inherent virtue. They believe the only virtue is removing yourself from society. So they're very much like, get off the grid, whatever the medieval fantasy equivalent of that is. Don't be a part of the system. Don't engage. Don't interact. Don't, get away from it as much as you can, and don't fight. Outlander's very, very tempting for someone who's removed themselves from the grid virtually, because they would be, a wilderness person, but I'm actually thinking hermit. Discovery. The quiet seclusion of your extended hermitage gave you access to a unique and powerful discovery. Oh, okay. So think about it this way. Well, we'll reverse it. It wasn't that they found something out and went into hiding, because that's much more of a neutral character, true neutral character. This is, in fact, someone who went into hiding and figured something out. Because that's how it doesn't have to be, but I like that. I like the idea that they went off on their own, they were doing their research, they don't want to get involved, they don't want to poke their head out because they know that they'll be sort of weaponized, society is bad, don't get involved with it, people suck. Maybe that's all it is. Just they don't like people. So that's why they don't fight for anything, right? They believe that society is bad, but they also don't like people. That, I think, is the difference. And the irony there is, D. King, you just said, it makes you think of Caduceus Clay, and Caduceus loves people. But I think chaotic neutral is... that's why they're not going to fight for anybody. They're not going to hurt anybody. But people suck, and society sucks, so they're not going to get involved. It's less anarchy and more apathy. So this is the discovery background. The quiet seclusion of your extended hermitage gave you access to a unique and powerful discovery. The exact nature of this revelation depends on the nature of your seclusion. It might be a great truth about the cosmos, the deities, the powerful beings of the outer planes, or the forces of nature. It could be a sight that no one else has ever seen. You might have uncovered a fact that has long been forgotten, or unearthed some relic of the past that could rewrite history. It might be information that would be damaging to the people who consigned you to exile, and hence the reason for your return to society. Work with your DM to determine the details of your discovery and its impact on the campaign. So obviously there is no DM in this context, so we're going to keep the discovery vague for our purposes. I think, you know what it is? I think that they've probably discovered that something is going to happen that is going to be bad enough that they have to get involved. That's what it is. It's that they've discovered something, like, they've discovered whatever the equivalent in the campaign would be of the countdown to the end of the world. They know that the bad guys' plots are happening, and it's not just about they're going to kill the king, because he'd be like, who cares? It's about, it's going to be much, much worse than that. It's going to be hell on earth, whatever that is. So, all right, let's look at, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the ideal matches what we're talking about. So it's either going to be free thinking, live and let live, or self-knowledge. What are those? Free thinking. Inquiry and curiosity are the pillars of progress. Live and let live. Meddling in the affairs of others only causes trouble. If you know yourself, there's nothing left to know. Self-knowledge. I actually think what it's going to be is inquiry and curiosity are the pillars of progress. I kind of feel like maybe this might be a necromancer. Oh, but progress. That's the wrong word. Because he doesn't care about progress. She doesn't care about progress. Meddling in the affairs of others only causes trouble. That's what it is. I've been isolated for so long that I rarely speak, preferring gestures and the occasional grunt. I am utterly serene even in the face of disaster. The leader of my community had something wise to say on every topic, and I am eager to share that wisdom. I feel tremendous empathy for all who suffer. I'm oblivious to etiquette and social expectations. Yeah, probably. I connect everything that happens to me on a grand cosmic plan. I don't think so. I often get lost in my own thoughts and contemplation, becoming oblivious to my surroundings. I am working on a grand philosophical theory and love sharing my ideas. No, doesn't share his ideas. She doesn't share her ideas. Lost in own thoughts and contemplation. Yeah, probably. I think so. So oblivious to etiquette and lost in thought. We've got a bit of a Gandalf vibe there. Those are both slightly Gandalf-y. Isolated for so long that I rarely speak. I know, I like that one too. I mean, it's so similar to these others, I'm just going to go ahead and include it. It doesn't mean that I literally wouldn't speak as the character. It just means that, like, they, we could just say that they're a bit laconic. Bonds. Nothing is more important than the other members of my heritage, but no, definitely not. I entered into seclusion to hide from the ones who might still be hunting me. I must someday confront them. Maybe. I don't feel like must someday confront lines up with the neutrality. So we're going to say no for that. I entered seclusion because I loved someone I could not have. No. Should my discovery come to light, it could bring ruin to the world. I do like that. My isolation gave me great insight into an evil that only I can destroy. Yeah, so okay. That one is more what we were thinking about than 5. Yeah, it's more 6. Because 6 pulls them out of retirement, and 5 encourages them to turtle up more. And that's what I don't like about 5, just for the purposes of creating a character who's going to go on adventures. Flaws. Now that I've returned to the world, I enjoy its delights a little too much. I harbor bloodthirsty thoughts that my isolation and medication Sorry, I read that as medication. Meditation failed to quell. I'm dogmatic in my thoughts and philosophy. You know what? We're starting a character with their alignment. Probably that one, but let's see what else. I let my need to win arguments overshadow friendships and harmony. I'd risk too much to uncover a little bit of lost knowledge. I like keeping secrets and won't share them with anyone. I'm going to say, for sure, dogmatic in philosophy. And I think keeping secrets. All right, lifestyle. Wretched. You live in inhumane conditions with no place to call home. You shelter wherever you can. They live in wretched conditions because they don't involve themselves at all. I mean, that's more what they're willing to live with. Faith. Not much. Yeah, D. King, exactly. Because they don't care for status. They are comfortable living squalid. It makes sense. Like, they think there is as much a virtue to that as anything. and they feel like everyone should just, you know, live and let live, go where you want to go. I want to roll for stats because I'm a glutton for punishment. If you all saw my last video, you know that was a... Oh, it hasn't come out yet on YouTube. But if you were there for the last live stream, it was a disaster. But we'll see. Ooh, okay. I don't think this passes my threshold, but let's double check. +2, +2, -2, -2. We have a total of 0. Yeah, so that would not hit my threshold that I established in the last video, which is that you have to have a total of +2 if you add up all your modifiers. Shades of Autumn, yeah, I'm not picturing this as a charismatic character because, as we said, they don't communicate well. They're off in their own world. They speak only in like grunts. I think a very low charisma makes sense. I don't picture them being particularly intimidating either, so there's no reason to buff charisma. I like this spread, so I'm actually going to screenshot it just in case I end up going back to it. I do like it, but let's try for the I would re-roll it if this was if I was the DM. I would make someone re-roll for this. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it passes. That's a fun, interesting spread. That means I can continue to put charisma 7 and strength 5, intelligence 17, 13 dex, con and wisdom. I like not having a negative wisdom, but like we don't need anything more fancy than that. Oh wow. This also technically doesn't pass the threshold. But I don't think it matters in this case. Oh well. -2. I'm going to ignore the strength, though. Having a low strength, I think, is neutralized by the fact that they're a wizard. So I don't think it matters. So I think we're really looking at a +4 versus a -2. Realistically. I don't think the strength matters. I would say, even if my GM had the house rule that I do, of like, oh, you can re-roll this, I would say, I'm good, I'm happy, I like this. I like the negative strength and the negative charisma a lot. I'm kind of tempted to swap them. Believe it or not. Yeah, that 5 is low. But I'm going to do it. I'm really going to zonk their charisma. Now, that is worse. I will point out. Because things make charisma saving throws. And having a 5 in charisma is a disaster. But this is I really picture this as like a version of like a little bit of a Gandalf. Or like Gandalf meets Radagast. Like, this is a weird little crank. At level 2, they'd be a necromancer. But we're not... This isn't a character I need to see at level 2 to know what they're going to do. You know, this isn't like taking a character up to see their subclass at level 3 to really figure out all their stuff. Like, I kind of get the idea. Oh, man. What makes the most sense for them? I mean, I could just go human. I got no problem with that. So, Owlbear, you said you think the low charisma deserves a monstrous race. Zephy and Steak are discussing Goblin. Oh, wait. I know what it's going to be. I actually do know what it's going to be, and I'm changing what my... I don't think I'm going Necromancer anymore. Oh, maybe I will. We'll see. So, initially, I was like, do we want to go with something who is a sort of monstrous or someone who's potentially prejudiced against? And I don't think I'm going to, but I was tempted, right? If it's like, oh, this is a tiefling or a drow, but... I almost feel like, yes, you could. I don't think that would be a bad way to go. It's very tempting, actually, to go that direction. Goblin, you all pointed out as well, is a great one for that as well. And it kind of justifies them feeling so embittered by the world, right? It's basically a way to say, well, this is the reason they're the way they are. But the problem with that, and it's not really a problem with that. I think I just have an idea I like better, which we'll get to in a minute. The issue with that is, there's a whole discussion about whether you should or shouldn't play, not even whether you should, how to ethically, I guess is the way to say it, how to ethically play in-canon minorities in a fictional world. And I have no problem doing it in my games, but this is really one where, in theory, I would be saying, hey, I want you to do fantasy racism to me. I would really need to trust my game master to do that in a way that is respectful to everyone at the table. I don't care what they say to me. I want to make sure that other people at the table are comfortable with that, and some people aren't. So I'm not like jumping to go to that. If it was a group I'd played with for a long time and we all knew each other really well, I'd be fine with that. But I also have an idea that I like a lot. Because if we're thinking about this character, their ideology essentially is leave everyone alone and leave me alone. They are essentially turtling up. So I think they're a turtle, which means of course they live in squalor. They've got a shell. They don't need money. I just like the way it thematically represents the alignment that we discussed. Animal handling, nature, perception, stealth, survival. Survival makes perfect sense. Well, so that's the other thing I was going to say. You said turtles make good wizards because of the shell AC. And I had an idea a long time ago for a character, and maybe we'll talk about this in a future video. Oh, because this is a Mordenkainen's one, so I get to assign these things now. Oh, cool. Do that right now. If I can increase +1 to intelligence, +1 to constitution, and +1 to dexterity, that helps everything across the board. I had a character a long time ago for somebody who... I'm going to do a whole other video about that character. The reason why I'm never going to play that character is because I don't know how I could play that character in a way that is respectful towards people who have a very different lived experience than me. But that'll be a subject for a whole other video way down the road. But the class and the archetype would be a turtle who is not a necromancer, but a School of Abjuration wizard. Because, man oh man, getting the... Oh, Owlbear, you said, I'm not getting the dex benefit to AC. Oh, that's true. I'm going to switch con and dex then. Because, like, you're right, we don't really picture turtles as being especially dexterous, unless they are teenaged and mutant and ninjas. 12 wisdom also, like, well, they lived out in the wilderness. They don't interact with anybody. It should be a little better. An abjuration wizard with a turtle. Man, oh man. That is a mighty armor class very quickly. So, yeah, I'm definitely... Oh, I like this character a lot. So he just needs a name. The reason I like separating them from being a necromancer and not going that way anymore is because it feels like that's a great reason to hate society and feel embittered by it because you were doing crimes. And I don't hate that, but I also just like the idea that, like, no, they don't want to get involved. And the abjuration school kind of, again, represents that idea of, like, withdrawing and not getting involved and just shutting yourselves off from the world. We have turtles named after Renaissance men. Why can't she be named after a Renaissance woman? Is this a male? Is this a female character? Is this a male character? Is this neither? Let's roll. 1d4. 1 for male, 2 for female, 3 for either, 4 for neither. 3, either. Okay, let's get a gender-neutral name. Gender-neutral Italian names. See, it's not like turtles have to have Italian names. It's a very funny sentence that I'm implying that. But my point is more like, you know, just going down different roads to see what... Because I know if I look up gender-neutral names, I'm going to get the same ones I always get. You know, Taylor. You know, the ones that I always see whenever I look up characters. By specifically going for, okay, are there any that are of a different culture that can be used for either? Italian words that are advertised as authentic gender-neutral names. None of these are used in Italy as first names, more on why below. Of course, you're free to choose whatever you'd like to name your child. This is a very sassy website. Zelante. Ooh, that's actually fun. Zealous? Zelante. Zealous or earnest? Zelante. I kind of like that. That's kind of good. And it means zealot and earnest, which kind of lines up with what we've been talking about with this character's ideology. You know, we're kind of representing it. Yes, they are of sorts a zealot. Just because we are starting with an alignment. Gender fluid / any pronoun. 46. Sure, I don't know. Let her be old. Let them be old. Why not? I think that's the character. That's a good... I like that character. Zelante. Now, one thing I didn't mention during the live stream, but I was thinking about while creating the character, is that I want this character to be able to change. After all, we talked about Han Solo a lot. He's sort of the default image I have in mind for a chaotic neutral character, but he doesn't stay chaotic neutral for very long. And while that character is designed around discovering a faith in people and a willingness to fight to do the right thing, that doesn't mean that I want this character to have the same direct path toward an obvious character arc. In fact, I'd want a character who feels like they could easily tip one way or the other, depending on how the story goes. Now, that's easier said than done. I mean, after the livestream, I remember the character of Raistlin from the Dragonlance novels. He wears red robes, which are meant to signify neutrality, so canonically he's some version of neutral. But also, everybody around him thinks he's pretty dang evil. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion among most of his adventuring companions that he can't be trusted, and then he will inevitably show his hand and reveal that he's always been evil. So yeah, it's hard to make a chaotic neutral character who feels like they could succumb to any alignment, but not make it obvious which way they'll probably go. Like, the only one I can think of where their fate felt truly uncertain was maybe Jesse Pinkman, but other than that, most neutral characters feel like they're stuck in their neutral mode, and that's usually true of lawful neutral or true neutral characters. Or it seems like they're fated or doomed towards specifically good or evil, but rarely both. And honestly, that's probably because good and evil are extremely powerful concepts. Even if we can't agree on a definition, they're almost like magnets on the top and bottom of the alignment spectrum, drawing characters away from the center. And that's especially true if you drill down on some of the logical conclusions of some of these alignments. For example, we have philosophical concepts like inaction in the face of injustice makes an individual morally culpable, which implies that anyone who is neutral is actually just evil, at least if the system is unjust, which most systems usually are. But also, depending on the campaign, how likely is it that a character hovering in the neutral range will be tempted towards evil when so many modern campaigns are about fighting world-ending threats, which is an inherently good act? Honestly, the two most common forms of temptation we see in our games is either will you steal from people or will you torture your enemies? And those are two very different questions. So I don't know, alignment is still a huge topic and one that we'll talk about a few more times later this year in some videos that I'm sure won't be remotely divisive. Something else I forgot to mention during the character creation livestream was that I almost made this character a druid. Honestly, I think the hermit background is basically tailor-made for the druid class, but that's a video for another day. But with the benefit of hindsight, I think if I'd gone down the rabbit hole, there were a bunch of possible class options that really could have worked. Even during the live stream, I never said it, but I considered what a cleric might look like if they were chaotic neutral. Because clerics don't need to worship gods, they can just be fueled by an idea. So what does a cleric look like if they're devoted to the ideal of chaotic neutrality? Or what if they do serve a chaotic neutral god, or they specifically serve a chaotic or neutral god, but they do so in a chaotic neutral fashion? I went with a wizard because I kind of liked the Gandalf vibes I was getting from the personality traits we selected. I don't think Gandalf is chaotic neutral, but he is a grumpy old man, and that's the energy I got from a lot of the background traits that I liked. And while I didn't wind up making this character a necromancer like I initially planned, the class still felt right to me. But I'm sure you could come up with other characters who match the idea of a chaotic neutral character, or who match with your idea of what chaotic neutral means, which might be totally different from mine. Just please don't make your chaotic neutral characters random for the sake of randomness, acting in ways no living creature would ever behave. You're giving chaotic neutral characters a bad name. I once knew someone whose character was so chaotically neutral, he rolled to see if his character was rational every single round. Not once per encounter, literally every round. That's not chaotic neutral. That's just trolling. But ultimately, alignment may be an imperfect tool, but all we're looking for is a way to better describe our characters. Hey there!
Dude, Jesus!
Did you say describe? What? No. What are you talking about? Describe is an Any award-winning website where you can get literally tens of thousands of scenes to best describe your characters, spells, and even lines of dialogue if you can't find the words yourself. And if you're a game master, you can find descriptions of monsters, magic items, NPCs, and locations. And they also have a vast selection of dynamic maps, which are each linked to several descriptions, with a new map uploaded every 2 weeks. Oh, that's true actually. I just started a new campaign, and I'm planning to use Describe's maps to create a whole catalog of random encounters to have at the ready. Plus, Describe allows you to connect your account directly to Foundry, so I can skip a bunch of steps and have a map ready for my game within minutes. And Describe is offering a discount to the viewers of this channel. If you visit describe.com/supergeek and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout, you could save 10% off of your first subscription payment. Once again, that's dscryb.com/supergeek and use the promo code SUPERGEEK. Thank you so much to Describe for sponsoring this video. Thanks, Scary Ceiling Voice. You're alright. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Support me financially on Patreon, it really helps a lot. Come and join my Discord server. We have a bunch of awesome people there talking about these videos whenever they come out, as well as just talking about the latest news in the hobby and giving each other helpful advice. It's really lovely. Follow me on Twitch for more of these live streams, and also just to catch me playing Hades sometimes. And sign up for my newsletter for my latest updates. If you want to watch another character creation video, check out this one about starting with your character's ancestry. Until next time, play fair and have fun.